Good night, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Good night to all Vincentians at home and abroad. We are delighted once another Monday night to be here in the house, yeah, to speak to you on workers' issue. Tonight we're going to look at a number of issues affecting workers. Some of them may affect public servants and some will not. Some affect the general working class. And we're going to try and touch on as many as we could. As it relates to the public service, tonight we're going to look at transfer and the use of transfers by permanent secretaries and heads of departments. And we're also going to look at Public Service Commission and advertising of vacancies. We're going to report to our members via this medium on our consultation with the Honorable Minister of Finance about 2 or 3 Fridays back, and some of the issues that we discussed at that meeting. So before we head straight into some very serious issues that are affecting workers, I'm going to ask with me tonight two lovely ladies, lovely and powerful ladies. And I'm going to just ask them to say hello to our members and our listeners, both at home and abroad. Just to remind listeners that as we go through this program, you can call 718-734-5615. That's on the Magic Jack. The WhatsApp number is 497-6423, and your line 4565967. Call to make your contribution, to ask questions if you have a question to ask regarding any issue that we are addressing, or even issues that we have not touched on but you are very concerned about or want to ask a question about. You can call and do so. So at this time, our PRO and second Vice President of the Public Service Union, Prudence Jeffrey, say good night.
Good night to our listeners. Special good night to our public servants, especially those listening to us at this time. I wasn't here for quite some time, but I'm really happy to be here tonight.
Wow, that was brief. Really brief. I mean, Prudence, you really should have made up for all the time that you weren't here. Which really, and you're correct, which really was a pretty
the thing is,
long
we have
time.
a lot of issues to discuss, so we need to get into the issues.
And I will say this, one of those issues, we mentioned it the last time we were here, and I wanted to go a little bit more into it to show where we came from and where we are with respect to an issue that we dealt with for nurses. So before I forget, I'm going to put you on the spot also, because you wrote an exam, a number of you wrote a particular exam, and were it not for the union's intervention, you would not have been able to write that exam. And all praise be to God, every one of you was successful at that particular exam. So we'll talk a bit about that also, because I want to show that the union in its work is ensuring delivery of quality health care by its actions.
Sure.
And make sure that our country and our people get the best people, human resource, qualified to deliver those particular services. Shelly-Ann?
Hi, good night to my Vincentian people, to all public servants. were listening. I would join with Jeffrey. I have not been here for a while, but I am here tonight. And as she would have mentioned, there are a lot of issues to be discussed. I really hope that persons would take the opportunity to call and contribute to the discussion as we go along. So I hope we're going to have a productive evening, an enlightening one. And let me turn it back to Mr. Boucher before we get into the meat of the matter.
So as I just mentioned, this particular issue, and last time we were here, I think I congratulated the number of nurses who wrote a midwifery exam and was successful at it. But to get to the point of writing it, it wasn't easy.
It was a struggle.
In fact, if we had just given way, lay down and play dead,
Yeah, the nurses would still be waiting.
nurses would still be writing. In fact, they would never been allowed to write the exam because there were certain persons wanted to send them back to school, even after they had graduated with flying colors, pass all the exams, local exams, and the practicum. But when people, they normally say it's men who have egos, eh?
Yeah.
But when certain, but this wasn't a case of men, this was a case of women. When certain persons in certain positions have their egos, and when they figure that they have power onto themselves, they will do everything possible to pressure the ordinary man or woman who's just trying to rise up.
Or who was placed in the supervision.
Right. So I'm talking about a case that the union dealt with, was last year or 2 years back,
2 years ago.
but just concluded last year, I think. That case involved 4 nurses, one of whom in the studio right now, staff nurse Prudence Jeffrey. Have you guys gotten the license yet?
Yes, ma'am.
So officially now a midwife.
Officially now a midwife.
Right. And this case landed at the door of the PSU when these nurses had actually finished all their local exams, their practicums. They had graduated. I saw the big graduation in Victoria Park, and all the nurses graduated in shining colors, well decked down, only to learn that at the end of your graduation, the nursing council, headed by a certain individual, well, as an executive at the nursing council, decided that, hey, we wanted somebody to monitor, not, which is like an invigilator, certain practicum, and the people decided at that time, from based on what came out in court, that they really didn't need to be there at that time because they were confident that the nurses had done a good job. But the head of the nursing council decided, no, it's not going to go down that way. So before you can write the midwifery exam, you have to go back to school to do this practicum. And of course, women power, the nurses stood their grounds and said that they were not going to do that. The union that intervened just asked for a meeting was to have a simple discussion to find a solution, because as a trade union, we firstly believe in dialogue. If you can't have dialogue, then you have conflict and chaos reign. So we would make every attempt to have a conversation with whomever it is to see if we can find a solution. We believe in negotiating, we believe in compromise, but conflict is not one of our strong suit. We don't really want to engage in conflict. We want to find solutions. Unfortunately, those in authority did not have the appetite for a conversation or to have dialogue. They wanted none of it. When they say jump, we were supposed to say how high. The Public Service Union is not an organization that will lie down and play dead when there are issues affecting workers. And by now, I think Vincentians know that. And public servants know that. All workers know that. We would not lie down and play dead. We will fight with everything we have to ensure that there is fairness and that workers are treated right. And even the stubbornness that existed, and I want to say, even our very own lawyers who tried to force a conversation on the matter and did not, the persons again in authority just ignored the effort
that we made to have dialogue.
Made by through our legal counsel. After they ignored us, of course, and then we say, well, hey, let me try to the legal counsel. Maybe they will ignore that also, and left us with no choice but to take the matter to court to seek redress. Of course, the rest is history. In fact, they conceded somewhere in the middle of the trial, because by then, not just conceding, the head of that organization at the time resigned.
The whole executive almost resigned.
They almost resigned, the whole executive.
Practically, the whole executive was dissolved.
Yep. They resigned because really and truly, all they were trying to do was to pressure the nurses. Pressure the nurses to show who is in control, who is big and who is bad. And when we say this, it has to happen that way. Whether it's wrong or right, whether it is fair or unfair, they really couldn't care less. So they conceded, and on the behalf of the nurses, the union won a magnificent victory. And the nurses were then allowed to write their exams. And Prudence, of course, will tell us about that experience because she was there. The stress, the anxiety, and the anguish that they experience in just trying to be a qualified midwife to serve the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And not just serve the people of St. Vincent and Grenadines, serve them the right way. Because, I mean, through all the struggle, the nurses were actually still expected to work and perform duties as a midwife after they were denied the right to actually make the right to be a midwife legal. That struggle was not easy. At this point, on behalf of the other nurses, I must take the opportunity to commend the Public Service Union for their, not just their support, but for their continued hard work. Hard work in the sense that you had to have somebody behind you to stay focused in order to go through with such a struggle. It was not now just a struggle between the council, but also between your superiors at work, the persons who are working with you, because everybody was thinking, okay, the council is the highest governing body that relates to nursing, so nobody should take the council to court. Bearing in mind that the council can sue and can be sued. I didn't think they read that part of the legislation. So at this point, the struggle did continue. The Public Servants Union stayed headfast. It was a lot of humiliation. It was a very hard struggle for the nurses, but we made it. At that point, when they did give us the exam, you know, the funny thing is, after we would have gotten that leeway in court, we were placed back on the ward and not been given any information at all by the council. The Public Service Union again took up its mandate and decided, listen, we need to find out what is happening. So we went back to the lawyer, and the lawyer did take the opportunity again to write the council. And then they did made us an answer where we got the opportunity to write the exam on the 28th of November. And it really is a good feeling to know that we took that exam and all the nurses passed. But the good thing is, 4 nurses went to court, but it was actually 5 nurses who were denied the opportunity to write that exam. And with the struggle of the Public Service Union, all 5 nurses got the opportunity to write the exam. So all thumbs up to the Public Service Union. And this is just to reinforce our commitment as a union and the extra mile that we are willing to go for our workers. The struggle continues. You just have to make up your mind to work with the Public Service Union, and then we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, Prudence, for sharing with us your experience as one of those nurses. Now, I started out that way because I want to show that the Public Service Union is steadfast in its defense of public officers. Is steadfast in representing public officers. And oftentimes, we have to do that through the court, but before we get there, we employ dialogue. And we only get to the court when the authorities refuse to have dialogue to resolve the matter. We are going to look at transfers. And I want to use an example that is currently in the court, where an officer was transferred from his post in Union Island to the mainland. And I'm going to use that example and then show you what is happening currently with another officer and what has happened with at least with two of them. What does the Civil Service Order say about officers being transferred? And I think that section, the CSO section 2.1.
2.17.
So, Shellyan, tell us.
So 2.17 says on the transfers.
Go back to 2.16 because public servants are liable.
Right, so they are liable to be transferred. Officers are liable for transfer any post equivalent grade in the state. So wherever you're at, you would be transferred at that level. And the 2.17 says, 1, subject to the provision of paragraph 2 of this order, a transfer not involving a change in emolument of an officer.
Tongue-tied. Yeah.
Yes, I know. Of his post may be transferred, 1, within ministry or between ministries of any department of the ministry, and that would be made by the permanent secretary. B, is within a department or made by the head of that department or the PS of the ministry responsible for the department. C, is between ministries or between departments of different ministries, and this one would be done by the chief personnel officer, and that would be after consultation with the permanent secretaries that is concerned at the time.
So basically, a public servant can be transferred anywhere. Sure. Right. Now, the intention, the framers of this particular order, and these came from colonial times, right? Mm-hmm. It really was intended to give a public servant a rounded experience working in the service. Mm-hmm. So you can work in the Ministry of Finance, you can go and work in the Ministry of Health. Administratively, you understand the function of the service and you're able to carry out those functions no matter where you go. So you may need a senior clerk at Ministry X or at Ministry Y. The job, which is quite similar, you can move from point A to point B. And by moving, you gain the experience in working in different parts of the service. It also allows the public service itself to function more effectively. Clearly, if you require a more skilled person in a certain area and you look around, you may move that person to there because that need is there at that particular time. So a transfer really is to make the system work better, okay, and put us in a position to deliver the quality public service that is required to make the public happy. That's the intention of a transfer. So you're liable to transfer anyway. Okay, and it's again based on the expertise and the skills that is needed. However, over the years, this issue of the transfer have been used punitively. And we see it happening all the time And then we just got fed up with it. They said, listen, it just cannot continue. One in particular that they often use is the internal transfer.
Yeah.
Because the internal transfer does not require you, it is not done by the Service Commissioner or by the CPO or by the chairman of the Public Service Commission. It is done by the head of that department or ministry, permanent secretary, etc. So you move somebody from a nurse from hospital, send them to mental health or Union Island, etc., etc. It's an internal transfer. The order say that you must inform the Public Service Commission immediately upon effecting that transfer. Clearly, it is implied that you have to, you don't call them and tell them, well, hey, I transfer Prudence to Union Island Health Center, you know. It implies that it must be in writing.
True.
So, which says that the person that you're moving
Must get a letter
stating that they're moving from point A to point B. And the reason for that is Service Commission is supposed to be able to know where all of the public employees are. They have to be able to track them, okay? And this paper trail allows them to really do that. We saw the problem develop when this was not done within nursing. The whole issue with nurses and their allowances, this occurred simply because of this practice that was not done by nursing. I've been made to understand now that they have now started to do that thanks to the Public Service Union continually pushing for this to be done and standing up to the authorities, that is within the Ministry of Health, Nursing and Permanent Secretary, and insisting that it be done. We didn't make a lot of friends doing this.
True.
Didn't. People were upset, lose friendship, but we had to because it is the proper thing to do. It's funny when the simplest thing to do becomes the most difficult, simply because people don't want to do the work.
Or follow the rules.
Or follow some simple rules.
Yeah.
And I will, it's interesting because our Prime Minister alluded, and I will look for it somewhere in this program where he alluded to the lack of knowledge of permanent secretaries and heads of department as it relates to the civil service orders and the regulations.
True.
And he was correct in 2016 when he made that statement.
That is clear.
So we have currently in court, and this case should be coming up, continuing early in February, a case in which a junior clerk from Union Island Revenue Office was moved to Maritime Office. And the gentleman never worked on the mainland, don't have any house or dwelling on the mainland. I mean, he has worked all his life on Union Island. And suddenly, some permanent secretary, former permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security, I mean, he was always alone unto himself, decided to uproot the gentleman and move him. It's an internal transfer. Okay? That's given. He didn't get anything in writing, but the reasons for the transfer, that's where the problem lies. Why were you moving? Why did you have to move an officer from where him or her was stationed to some place where they have to not rent a house? Their expenses skyrocket because they've never lived in this particular place. And you couldn't care less how they got there. They just had to move. And we would have made attempts to even have conversation. And the permanent secretary said, we have time to waste with you. We have
young guy
the conversation.
That you speak about internal transfer. It is something that is very prevalent within the Ministry of Health. For example, you would take a nurse from hospital knowing that she lives in Barley and you would send her to Lewis Cornet home to work. As a matter of fact, I was reading something on Facebook where somebody put up and said that one of our senior nurses was on a phone call and she said, let us move her to Georgetown so that by the time she come home and done work, she has no life for herself. I mean, what is that saying? You, as the permanent secretary or the head of the department, should know that is what you put in, you're going to get out. Because the worker ain't going only tired when he get home to do nothing. He's going tired to come back to work for you the next morning. So then you really don't care anything about productivity and production.
Exactly. Because you really cannot separate the whole personal life from your professional work.
Exactly.
Because if you can't function there, then your productivity is going to be low at when you come to work, and it's going to affect the organization
and
on
I
a whole.
make reference of it every time we talk about dialogue, especially between senior persons. They always think is we versus them. They always like to run away from confrontation. They always like to run away from dialogue, and they always think that their style of management must, if I say this, it goes. Please be reminded that I have you in my hand, and I can punish you by either sending you here or writing up a bad report about you or sending you up to the PS. Sometimes you come, you're on duty, and somebody will just call up, Ross, the PS need to see you in his office tomorrow at 8. Nobody cannot give you any account as to why the PS want to see you or what is your reasons for going there. You would only know when you get there. That can't be right. You cannot be putting people under these unnecessary emotional and mental strain, and then you expect to still get 100% from them. And I have to be concerned because the people that we are taking care of, they are also public servants. My job, my duty is to ensure that my patients get the best out of me. So when you contrary me and make my life miserable, and as you say, I do not have any time for myself, you're actually reducing what I am supposed to be delivering to the persons that I'm supposed to be taking care of. And that is need for concern. So we really need to change our style and call for more dialogue. Our senior persons now should be calling for dialogue with their junior members to try and break the ice and understand what is happening.
And see how we can best deal with it.
But you see, that's a problem. The problem lies with those in authority. In 2016, the Prime Minister delivered at a speech at Public Service Week, I think it was. And the topic, the public service, the ongoing quest for enhanced productivity and a better delivery of service. That was the topic at the time. In the ongoing quest for enhanced productivity and a better delivery of service. And he outlined some of the problems or the factors that may hinder such from happening. But one of the things he said, public servants ought to acquaint themselves with the laws and regulations under which they function. One cannot play cricket unless one knows the rules of the game. The laws and regulations in relation to the public service are available. Public servants ought to read them. Senior public servants and the training division of the Service Commission ought to ensure that this is done. Indeed, some senior public servants need a refresher. But even when he said that some senior public servants need a refresher, some senior public servants don't know. They just don't know. And in this program, we'll demonstrate that. They just don't have a clue. Okay? And he asks for better and more productive attitudes to work, and production need to be inculcated and made manifest at the workplace. It goes to exactly what you're saying, Prudence and Shellyan. Because you're transferring these workers, you're making their lives a living hell, and you expect them to deliver at a high level, a quality, be productive. It doesn't work that way. And these persons in authority who are doing these transfers, I am convinced they just don't care.
Apart from not caring, I as you said, as reference made to the Prime Minister, they don't know, and apparently they're not reading either.
They're not willing to learn.
If you, as a permanent secretary in a ministry, I think you're supposed to be affected with, for example, the International Labour Organization laws, and you're supposed to be reading them and relate them to your own public service orders. For example, we speak highly. If you listen to Worldwide, you hear about occupational health standards. one of the most prevalent concept coming out of those standards is the psyche of the individual. And it would say to you, how can a mother work if her child is homesick? More so, an employer is responsible for their employee from the time that they leave home to the time that they get back home. Some of our superiors don't even care what time we leave the hospital. They know they're home. They know they're getting a ride. Even to figure out, okay, this employee lives in an area where it's a bit remote. You don't think it is wise for us to move her in an area that is more closer and is more accessible to work? They don't care anything about these things, and it's kind of puzzling. Because you're here expecting me to put 100% forward. You walk around and you say you are doing assessment in terms of qual. You would come and assess me in relation to cleaning, but you're not making sure that I have cleaning agents. That don't make no sense. None whatsoever. And it's time for us to move away from these little petty issues, and we here covering behind, oh, I am the person in charge. So when I walk around, you must stand up and say morning, but at the same time, you're not even finding out if I am having a good morning or how am I getting about in terms of workload.
Exactly.
What is happening on the ward? Do you have supplies?
No time for dialogue.
No time for these dialogues, and these are the things we need. We need dialogue. We need to be able to make our input. We need to be able that you see from my level and I see from your level. What do you expect of me? What do I expect of you? How can we work together to make it a more productive nation, a more productive unit, working for the development and the better of the people of St. Vincent and Grenadines? That is all we need.
Exactly.
One of the points he went on to make, and he said, one of the ways in which productivity and service can be enhanced is correcting the inadequate or poor leadership of some permanent secretaries, heads of department, or other senior public servants. We've been talking about this for a very long time. And I was given the example of the worker from Union Island. That matter is in the court now. The union had to step in and file an injunction to stop the transfer. That injunction was granted by the court. Granted by the court. And the judge asks an interesting question. If the worker moves from Union Island to the mainland, what is the allowance or the provision to compensate for uprooting the person and resettling them?
Because you're supposed to pay a relocation fee.
Right. Well, within the civil service orders, interestingly, there is some small allowance. I can't remember if it's called Hardy allowance or something. Some small allowance.
I know when you move nurses from St. Vincent to the Grenadines, you pay
Right.
hard area
So
allowances.
there is something there,
Yeah.
right? But it was there since the Rock of Gibraltar was a pebble, right? So the judge asked, well, I mean, recognizing that was eons ago. What is the value, if you bring it into modern day, how much will it really be now? And the Attorney General said, well, he really can't tell, because she needed a modern figure to say, well, if this is what is here, because I think it was less than $100, so which means really ancient. What is the modern figure? Bring it forward. What is the modern? They couldn't tell. She granted the injunction, recognizing, of course, that what you were doing to it
was an injustice.
Public was a serious injustice. You understand? And you gave no reasons whatsoever why the person was being transferred. Absolutely none. Nothing in writing. No evidence of any sort. And that case I am confident will be won by the union. Now, recently, as in last week, there are two cases that pop up, and I want to touch on both of them. But let's take the first one. The first one involves a transfer of an immigration officer from Kingstown to Mustique. Now, one may say, oh, that's just there, etc., etc. That's fine.
It's more than that. It's a
But
family affair.
this immigration officer happened to be a single parent, a mother, single parent with a 3-year-old child. There are some 63 immigration officers working in the immigration department. You select one who is a single mother with a 3-year-old child to transfer her by water motor. We were told that Miss Wilkinson is the one who conveyed the message to her that from such and such a time you are to move to Mustique to work. Figure out something to do with the child. Find somewhere to put her up. It's like you figure that out, but you move in.
Yes. Same thing they did.
The lady is in distress.
Of course.
Came to the union. Again, we embrace and we practice social dialogue. We write to the chief immigration officer, who is Miss Beverly Walker, and ask for a meeting to discuss this matter. Her response was, I am not talking to the union.
Wow.
Okay? It reminded me of that's why I brought the nurse's case. Similar case. It reminded me of the case with the gentleman in Union Land where we have to go to court. Mm-hmm. You are not talking to the union. A public service union that is recognizing the Constitution of Civilians and the Grenadines as a union representing public officers. You are not talking to the union.
And that doesn't it doesn't only go not talking to the union. It is saying clearly to us that as this boss or the supervisor, that your worker cannot approach you to have dialogue. So even if she herself has an issue, to even come and explain that this is my cause, this would affect me, please reconsider. She cannot do that. She reached to the union and you still do not want to even make way to have simple dialogue. And you know what is frightening? This is another woman.
A woman.
This is another woman.
There's an ILO
no one understand the struggle
convention, and you ladies would understand a 3-year-old. And I remember when I had my first child, being the first child, I was terrified, wanted to have a healthy child. And I go, why did I do all this research? That's what I learned. Between the age of 1 and 3, crucial years,
yes.
Formative years in which you have to shape.
Yes,
and mold that child mentally, and anything less than that can cause serious damage. That used to scare me. So I was paying lots of attention to that particular
age group.
Period. You understand? This child is 3 years old. And ILO Convention 156 deals with workers with family responsibilities. And Article 4 said, with a view to creating effective equality of opportunity and treatment for men and women workers, all measures compatible with national conditions and possibilities shall be taken to take into account of their needs in terms of conditions of employment and social security. You have to do everything in your power to ensure this family unity, this care of the child. This is not an adult. This is not a teenager. This is a 3-year-old that you, Miss Beverly Walker, couldn't care what happened to her when you take the mother and you displace her in Mustique. Who's going to take care of her child? You're telling her, go and figure that out. That's what the PSN National Security said to the gentleman from Union Island. However you want to find living quarters, you find that at your own expense. The court thought differently. And this is the problem I have. We are approaching them to have a conversation. But you'll rather the government be taken to court. You don't have to pay a cent. Through your stubbornness, ignorance, and vindictiveness, you'd rather the government be taken to court because you want to have your say.
Oh, your say should be the final.
And you are the big bad bully. What I say goes. This is a problem that we're having in the
Very
service.
sad.
This is a serious problem. The union have written to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security. But the civil service orders it give you a pathway to address the matter to the chairman. sometimes these things can be dealt with before it even get there,
Yeah.
which is what we attempt to do. Address it, nip it in the bud before you have to reach to the chairman of the Public Service Commission. And that's why we will go to the head of department, to the permanent secretary. And if we can't get an audience then to make your case,
Then we go to the court.
then you go to the chairman of the Public Service Commission, and if he himself or the CPO refuse to listen to you, you're forced to go to the court. This
where
is
is the
what
young lady
is
now?
happening. She's still working on the mainland because she has up until, I think, the first week in February to move. The distress to the worker, Miss Beverly Walker, the distress to the worker, and you just seem not to care about that. You nor your deputy. But I'm saying this matter must be dealt with. And I just don't understand how these public officers, and when I read what the Prime Minister said about public officers, about those in permanent secretary and heads of department, this is one of them. He's talking directly. This, to me, is directly speaking to the chief immigration officer. Inadequate or poor leadership. That's what she has displayed. Inadequate or poor leadership. That's not how you lead. And sometimes people think about the work. They only think about the work. They don't think about the
person who's
human
doing the
resource,
work.
the people who are our greatest treasure as a country. You don't think about them. Without them, everything falls apart. You don't think about them. You just think about the work. You don't see humanity. Somehow your heart is hardened. It reminds me of Pharaoh. No matter what signs you see, your heart just hardened. Your heart is so hardened that you cannot see the hurt and the pain you're bringing to a worker by forcing that worker to separate from their 3-year-old child. This one really is grievous to me.
It is.
And I hope that a permanent secretary try and address it, or the chairman of the Public Service Commission, because we are not going to stop until we have a hearing to address it. You cannot, as a head of department, continue to treat your workers like they are nobodies. You cannot do that. Okay, we're going to stand up to all of that. There is another case, and this case happened within the Ministry of Health at mental health. And I've been told, and I know my friend Abraham, I listened to his program on Friday night and he touched on it. And a worker who has been working all their life at mental health. So you'll figure that they're an expert in that particular area, understanding the patient, how to manage them and all sort of stuff. And the union have been, for quite some time, trying to address some issues at the mental health institution. Horrible conditions of work. We have spoken about it. Sewage system that don't function. That you have to use hose to flush and all of that sort of stuff. Horrible. There have been times when the whole place, when inside that mill water was flushed with feces. And you ask the very workers to put on water boots and go and clean it up. It's just unheard of. That is what was happening. And the conditions continue to be deplorable. And when the workers, and the union was quite involved in the attempt to take particular action, and there was supposed to be some industrial action taken, not with respect to conditions of work alone, but with respect to some prisoners that was supposed to be transferred to the institution. And all of the workers were on board. And then they put a hold on the prisoners being transferred there, right? Up to now, we still haven't had that meeting with Mr. Knight because he seems to have taken the position that he is having no dialogue. Again, he is one of them that the Prime Minister have spoken about. Poor, inadequate leadership. Okay, he is just one of them. And So when during December month, they had the people went on vacation, relievers came in. So we decided, and I'll say this to those who are listening and thought that you thwarted a sick out or some industrial action. You didn't. We decided that given the fact that many people were going off on leave and they're relievers, you're not going to force this other stuff upon relievers who are trying to make a dollar. So we say, let us call it off. But they didn't know the reason why. And I understand that the management of the institution went hurriedly called meeting, met with all of the staff. After, in every plan, there is some mole somewhere.
A mole, boy. A mole.
Always. No matter how good the thing look. Trust me, no matter how good you think the thing look, and you say everybody on board, I am telling you,
it seems like mole killing the
there's there is always some mole somewhere. The moment you done your plans, the thing don't leak back.
Yep.
And I don't understand because it is in their interest, right?
Yes.
But somebody else feel like they have to suck up or something.
That is how we work condition. Mm-hmm. You come to me, you try to bring
all the news,
and then you get a promotion.
Yep.
If I get the promotion and then listen, we have the power, so we could just transfer us. And that is how the ministry has been working. Nobody seemed to be taking into consideration, okay, how does this affect this worker? For example, you might transfer me to Georgetown, but then Ross would have preferred to go into Georgetown because it's easier for her, it's more convenient for her child. No sort of dialogue.
No conversation.
You cannot even give me a valuable reason why you send him to Georgetown, and then I cannot. You make the transfer look like I cannot question it. I cannot find out, okay, I cannot say, sister, listen, right now, it is not within my best interest to go there. Just take the transfer, shut your mouth and go. Whatever adjustment you have to make it.
So and that's the problem that we're having, right? Again, it boils down to one thing, lack of dialogue. A leader, anywhere in the public service, would understand is management 101. It's about the people.
It's about the people. So
it's about
the people.
Yes. And when you have workers in that you are supervising, you have to pay attention to the things that are affecting them. Not saying that you go out of your way, but you have to see what is affecting that worker and his or her productivity. Okay, a happy worker is a productive worker.
Of course.
Yeah, but when the worker is productive, it makes you look good.
And it makes
generally
you look good.
Makes the organization
Clearly, one could look at you and say, yes, that's a good leader. He has his team intact. We see in productivity despite the hiccups. But as you say, Ministry of Health full of holes.
So this worker was calling, and I know Shelley have some of the stories. So I'm going to ask her. Remember, we are all a team and we all get involved in these issues. So I'm going to ask Shelley to give us the backdrop to the transfer of this particular worker.
Okay, well, since the information is already out there, because most persons would have heard of the transfer before the actual or the official letter, I should say, was given to the person. So, Mr. Ross, I have to mention his name because I guess everybody know by now, was on vacation. The letter is dated December 31st. So he was on vacation at the time. He would have resumed duty on the 20th. So the letter is stating that you're supposed to be reporting to the Louis Bonnet home, having worked at the mental health since appointed. The thing is, I don't know of any issue, and I'm not talking because of the fact that he's my husband.
Oh,
I am
he
just.
Is. He is.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well.
I am talking. This is official business now. This is union matters. I am talking because the Ministry of Health, as Jeffrey was saying, this whole thing of transfer, you would hear, okay, somebody you just go to mental health as out of punishment for something. So you were on duty and you would have said
But Ross, before you
something,
go on, it is
something in relation to an issue that is not pleasing to your superiors. Right? So Mr. Boucher was mentioning about the sick out that they were planning to have. And from my understanding, the management there would have called the workers one by one, two by two, and would have told them, okay, she heard of this and all of that. Mr. Ross was one of the persons who were called to the office. And apparently he was told that they understand that he was the one that was pushing it. He was behind it and all of that story there. And the next thing you know, being on vacation and then everybody's saying, well, you transfer to... Everybody's knowing that he's transferred to Louis Punnett. He haven't even received the letter yet from Ministry of Health. And everybody could meet you and tell you gone Louis Punnett. How unprofessional is that?
no, but we have to give them a thumbs up. It means that the union is actually working. Come, Mr. Ross got a letter.
Well, right.
indicating that
This
he is
time they did
transferred.
right.
But normally in nursing, you would see your name on the change list. Or somebody will say, you know you got Louis Punnett. When you do look now, your name on the change list, you haven't just call Louis Punnett now for your duty. No letter. So we
So
have to
my
give them
thing
the
is
thumbs
not
up.
so much being transferred to see you bringing your skill set to that place or that place that can benefit from what you have to offer. It's like, to me, it's just this whole vindictiveness of it. You did something and we not really approve of it and you are not really my friend. So I would
Yes,
send you
that's
to Louis Punnett, or I would send you to mental health as a means of punishing you or silencing you for whatever reason. These things are not right.
So we are saying that Mr. Ross brought the issues to the forefront as it relates to mental health. So we send him to Louis Punnett home because it's not refurbished.
I guess you would have no issue to talk
So we
about.
have this to talk about.
So this is your way of dealing with
So you
issues.
get
So
rid of the
instead
man
of
who's talking
your
about the
workers
issue.
are complaining of the deplorable conditions that they have to work, and as management, instead of trying to see how you can address the issues, you are going out and threatening and doing your own story, and these things are not right.
And that's the problem. Again, that's the problem. And we can't blame politicians. It is the senior public servants who are creating these problems. Yeah? They are the ones who are making it difficult and creating these unfavorable conditions for fellow public servants. Nobody has any problem with transfers, but let a transfer be meaningful
Exactly.
and let it be based on good reasoning. Don't transfer a person because you want to silence them, which is what is alleged in this particular case. Silencing a person, I mean, I just don't get it. You understand? And they just continue unabated because the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health, he is also aware of all of these things happening. And as a part of the problem with the management of the institutions, is a part of the problem. There's no reason. There's no. It is not. It's not rocket science why you have so much problems within a particular ministry. You know, it's not rocket science. It's part of the problem. These things we are seeing needs to stop. Okay, they need to stop. Treat public servants with respect, regardless of whatever ministry. We understand that they must be transferred. Sometimes they're happy they ask for transfer themselves because they want to have a different experience. We understand all of that. Treat them with respect. Know the regulation you senior managers and permanent secretaries. Know the regulation.
And just before we take our break, the funny thing is that somebody heard that you would have gone to mental health and they may not know the details. And the first thing they could say to you, what did you do? Or where you do them now? So there isn't anything to say, okay, this person may have been transferred on a genuine basis to see what they can offer to the other
On a good
institution.
merit. Yeah.
And it's very, very sad.
That's the problem. When we return, And again, let me remind listeners, it's the number to call is 4565967 or the WhatsApp number 4976423 or the Magic Jack 171873455615. When we return, we are going to look at Public Service Commission on advertising of vacancies. And we will explore some disturbing information that we received recently regarding the advertising of vacancies and what really should obtain. Who is responsible for advertising vacancies and what vacancies should they advertise? And when we come back, that is what we will be looking at.